everyone, it's Maki here. Today, we are going to take a look at an MSV from the Gundam Z series. The mobile suit variation project creates mobile suits that never appeared in the TV anime series. This time, I'll be introducing the GuAIZ type firearms experimental. The GuAIZ is a mobile suit developed as a trump card for the ZAFT forces. As the name suggests, it was also designed to test and operate prototype weapons. Several weapons that many viewers will instantly recognize are carried on its back and waist. But how did these weapons end up being equipped on this unit? What impact did they have on the history of the cosmic era? Let's take a closer look at what makes it so appealing. If you'd like to support my channel, please consider joining the 99¢ monthly membership. As a thank you, you'll receive a name badge and exclusive comment stamps. Alright, let's begin our analysis. 25 January, Cosmic Era 71. While a cruiser, a ZAFT soldier successfully led his unit in stealing prototype mobile suits from the Earth Alliance. These units, known as the GATX series, were found to have astonishing performance capabilities that far surpassed those of ZAFT standard mobile suits. They feature compact, high-performance beam weapons designed for mobile suits. They also feature phase shift armor, which provides exceptional defense against physical impact and heat. The coordinators realized that a mass-produced mobile suit combining these two features would eventually pose a major threat to them. In response, ZAFT initiated a new mobile suit development program. This program was divided into two major plans. The first was to upgrade the GuAIZ, which had already been designed using the technologies obtained from the GATX series. The other plan was to create a symbol of decisive victory for the coordinators. This project was launched in strict secrecy under the direct orders of the chairman of the Plan Supreme Council, Patrick Saar. The mobile suits used in the decisive battle, known as the X series, would later be named Freedom, Justice, and Providence. The GuAIZ type firearms experimental was a mobile suit created as part of the X series development program. An existing GuAIZ was repurposed to conduct operational tests for new weapons intended for the X series. There is a particularly interesting detail about this GuAIZ. In Japanese, it is called Kai. This word means modified. In other words, it literally means a modified GuAIZ. The GuAIZ type firearms experimental was completed in February of Cosmic Era 71. The redesigned and officially adopted GuAIZ was deployed in combat in September of the same year. As I mentioned in my episode on the GuAIZ, there are actually multiple variants of this unit. The officially adopted GuAIZ had reduced performance compared to the original design. This was done to reduce the cost of mass production. As previously mentioned, the officially adopted GuAIZ entered combat in September. In contrast, the firearms experimental type was deployed as early as February. This means that it was based on the original GuAIZ design before any performance reductions were implemented. Many fans probably interpret this as the mass-produced GuAIZ was modified to create the firearms experimental type. However, based on these facts, a more accurate statement would be that the original GuAIZ was modified to create the firearms experimental type. While it was still an experimental mobile suit, its performance was remarkably high compared to conventional units. Let's take a closer look. Its defining feature is that it carries prototype equipment intended for the X series. The beam rifle mounted on it is the same type used by Freedom and Justice. This beam rifle also served as the prototype for the beam rifle, later used by the mass-produced GuAIZ. It delivers an extremely high output with greater firepower than the beam rifles of the GATX series. The GATX series beam rifles already had greater firepower than the large beam cannon operated by the ZIN. Furthermore, the ZIN's large beam cannon had the drawback of being able to fire only 3 shots despite using large cartridges. The firearms experimental type is equipped with a battery pack capable of supplying enough power to operate the beam rifle. This demonstrates the fact that a significantly more powerful battery pack has been developed compared to the ZIN. Next is the lifter mounted on its back. This is the prototype of the one equipped on the Justice Gundam, the Film 00. The lifter is equipped with machine guns and beam cannons. It also has 3 thrusters installed. Testing revealed that the lifter did not generate enough thrust to achieve flight. Consequently, the Justice Gundam was equipped with a lifter designed with 6 thrusters. This lifter is also equipped with an auxiliary power pack. It was found that the GuAIZ's standard battery pack could only sustain combat using its weapons for 5 minutes. Even with the auxiliary power pack, combat involving both phase shift armor and weapon systems could only be sustained for 10 minutes. However, the firearms experimental type was intended purely for weapon testing and was not designed for actual combat use. The addition of the power pack appears to have been a measure to ensure efficient and smooth testing. Nevertheless, when compared to the ZIN's large beam cannon, which could only fire 3 shots, it's clear that this was an extremely high-performance mobile suit. As mentioned briefly in the explanation of the lifter, another notable feature is that the entire body is composed of phase shift armor. When the phase shift armor is activated, the entire body takes on an orange color. Interestingly, there are no illustrations showing the unit with the phase shift armor deactivated. The MSV storyline uses photos of Gunpla as illustrations. Photos of the Gunpla assembly process are also published. Among these, there are images of the GuAIZ-type firearms experimental before it is painted. Of course, this is simply a snapshot of the Gunpla during the building process. However, it's entertaining to imagine that this could depict what it would look like with the phase shift armor deactivated. Now let's take a look at its weapons. First up is the beam rifle that we mentioned earlier. This was the weapon plan for Freedom and Justice. Following operational testing, however, it was concluded that in its current state, the energy consumption was too high to make it suitable for actual combat use. Consequently, a temporary plan was made to equip the X series with a downgraded version of the beam rifle. However, once the practical use of the neutron jammer Kayla was confirmed, this energy shortage issue was resolved. Consequently, the beam rifle from the firearms experimental type was adopted for the X series without modification. Next is the Lakata Beam Saber. This is the same weapon equipped on Freedom and Justice. It is unclear whether it can use the ambidextrous halberd mode, in which the 2 sabers are connected. There is no mention of this in any of the available documentation. However, as the model number is the same, it can be assumed that this beam saber is also capable of being connected. Next is the railgun. This weapon shares the same model number as the one on Freedom. Balkan guns, just like those on the mass-produced GuAIZ, are mounted on the head. These were installed based on data obtained from operating the GATX series. As I mentioned earlier, the firearms experimental was completed in February. Interestingly, this weapon is already incorporated into the original GuAIZ design. As it is a conventional weapon rather than a beam weapon, it may have been easier to implement quickly. Now, let's look at the weapons on the lifter. First is the Fortis beam cannon. This has the same model number as the one on the Justice Gundam. The fact that they were able to complete this beam cannon in about 1 month after successfully capturing the GATX series really highlights the incredible capability of ZAFT's development staff. In addition, the lifter is equipped with 4 machine guns. These are the same as those on the Justice Gundam. The firearms experimental type was equipped with an additional power pack. However, with the adoption of the neutron jammer KO, the Justice Gundam lifter no longer required one. Consequently, extra space became available on the lifter for additional equipment. This led to the addition of extra thrusters and rotating machine guns. This concludes the overview of the GuAIZ type firearms experimental's basic equipment. However, examining the Freedom Gundam settings reveals that other equipment also existed. This is the Bala. This is a high-output beam cannon stored within Freedom's wings. This beam cannon has the highest destructive power of any beam weapon developed for mobile suits by ZAFT. However, the settings state that the firearms experimental type became non-functional after firing twice. This suggests that there must have been a configuration in which the firearms experimental type was equipped with and used the Bala. Unfortunately, there are no illustrations or photos. Was the Bala mounted on the lifter? Or was the lifter removed and replaced with a backpack, similar to the one on Freedom? There is no definitive information available. Considering that the lifter is detachable equipment, I personally speculate that there may have been a wing-shaped backpack. Exploring this kind of information and imagining your own interpretations can be a really fun experience, as can drawing illustrations or even customizing gunflow based on these ideas. Many people are curious to know whether it was equipped with a multi-lock-on system. Unfortunately, there is no clear answer to this question documented anywhere. However, there is a description that may provide a clue. It states that as a result of operational testing, the fire control system of the firearms experimental type was refined and installed in the X series. This suggests that the multi-lock-on system was not newly developed for Freedom, but that a prototype already existed at the GuAIZ type firearms experimental stage. There are also photos showing scenes from the operational tests. In these images, the unit is shown holding all of its ranged weapons at once. Considering that this was a top-secret development project, it is unlikely that these images were taken for propaganda purposes. It seems reasonable to assume that using all of its ranged weapons simultaneously was part of the intended testing procedure. After all, the GuAIZ type firearms experimental was an experimental mobile suit and was not designed for actual combat. However, it has been confirmed that it participated in battle during the final stages of the Cosmic Era 71 war. It can be seen equipped with an energy supply cable, serving a role similar to that of a fixed turret. Nevertheless, there are no surviving ZAFT records, indicating that an official deployment order was ever given for this mobile suit. Later historians have speculated that it may have been used based on the independent judgment of frontline soldiers. While no definitive information remains, It is possible that the GuAIZ-type firearms experimental still has many untold stories to tell. Thank you so much for watching until the very end. I'll see you again in the next episode.